Now just wait 1 second. Now you hold on 1 second. Just hang tight. You wait right there. You stay. Hang on 1 second. Yo, we got a problem. I got all YouTube out there and they think we're doing sex in the house. I told them we're doing PEX in the house. PEX in the house. I hope they'll settle for a water distribution video. Well, all right, if you're down with PEX, come on in. All right, welcome back to the ShabinLife. Before we get started with the video, I want to give a big ShabinLife shout out to Dennis and family down in Florida. I hope you guys are all doing well. Thank you for always checking out the videos. So, I know I've been talking in the last few videos about the mechanical series. We did the gas line, then we did the drain line. Now we're going to do the PEX. And I was thinking, PEX is PEX, right? Blah 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 blah. Nothing like just running some blue and red and white tubing. There's a million videos out there of people installing PEX, running PEX through the walls and through studs and all that good stuff. I don't think I'm going to bore you with a PEX install video, let's say. Certainly, like I said, if you want to know how to do it, you know, there's a ton of videos out there. I'm sort of just going to show you, like I've done in the last few videos, just a little bit upstairs, a little bit downstairs. But this is an off-grid homestead journey, right? This is an off-grid build. It's not just a, you know, mechanical series or just the house, you know, channel. So since I didn't record this video right away when I got done doing the PEX upstairs and downstairs, since then I've installed the water control system or the water distribution, you know, center downstairs for not only the manifold that supplies, you know, the PEX, but the jet pump and the filters and everything that basically is mounted to filter the rainwater. Since I was able to install all that stuff down in the crawl space, I thought I would make this video more about the sort of the filtering of the rainwater and our actual water distribution system rather than just the PEX video. I mean, I'll show you a couple terminations and some fittings and the tubing and the stub outs and stuff like that, how I mounted them real quick upstairs. But I thought it would be more interesting for you guys to see the filter system downstairs. However, before we sort of get started with anything, I think it might be best for me to take you guys outside to show you the accessory building and where our cistern is going to go to collect the rainwater runoff in order to funnel that water even into the house. So we sort of have half the job done. We have the water in the house done, and I'll take you outside to show the accessory building. That's going to be something that we're going to get started on next. So let's take a run outside. So to give you a better understanding before we go into the crawl space to see how the water comes in, essentially what's going to be here is an accessory building. There'll be a 24 by 18 building, be very similar to the house, same truss style as well. And inside that accessory building, let's think of it more of a mechanical building, if you will. It's going to house the cistern, which will be right up here in this front left corner. It's also going to house all of the solar equipment. So the charge controller, inverters, batteries, and it'll also have the main panel. That panel will then feed the sub panel in the house. And I know there's a lot going on here, and we'll obviously go over a lot of this stuff while we're building the actual accessory building, as well as when we're outfitting it with solar and the cisterns and all that good stuff. And then the other half will probably just be a little bit of a workshop, probably to maintain a lot of the stuff that's in that building. But I had to do the building a little bit unique. So you can see the rock that's down there now, and you can see sort of the big boulders. I spent a little bit of time this morning before it got hot out. Yeah, I said hot out. It's gonna be like 65 today, which is awesome. But I spent a lot of the time this morning. A lot of the rock that we had left over from the driveway, I just had one of the excavators drop it in the center of this guy. Now I'm sort of building this as we go along. The idea is to basically level out an area where I can put this accessory building. There's no floor in this building because the cistern, you know, 2,500 gallon cistern, you know, probably going to weigh, off the top of my head, probably like 20,000 pounds full. You know, obviously that's not going to be on somebody's subfloor, and I don't want to pour a pad here for a couple reasons I don't really want to get into. So the idea is just like the Shabin, basically make a base, and then I'll just use a plate compactor a few times each layer to get this really packed down, and it'll just get filled with modified, keep going. So it'll be like having almost, you know, a cement pad down there for that cistern to sit on. Be nice and strong, and then it'll be pressure treated on the bottom, T111 around the sides to match the board and batten on the house, blah, 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 blah. So we'll get into the building when we're actually doing it, but so that you guys understand, the white stack pipe coming out of there is a 6-inch PVC pipe that has a 1-inch polyethylene water piping inside of it, and that's basically to insulate it. If you haven't seen that video, you can always go back. You know, I'll try and put a link here to how we insulated the pipeline, just like Josh and Aaron did on Wild Wonderful Off Grid. Basically like a perforated 6-inch PVC pipe with the water line kind of floating in the middle, and then filled it with foam. I don't know if it'll work, but it was the best. It was the best to come up with, and I liked their idea, so I went with it. But if you want to check that out, you can watch that video. So essentially, that white pipe will get cut down once the actual building's done and the cistern's in place, and then that polyethylene pipe will get plumbed into the cistern, and that's what will carry the water into the house. So you'll see that black polyethylene pipe come into the house, and at least you'll understand now where it's basically coming from and how it's feeding the water to the inside. There'll be other things going on in here in regards to some filters and things like that from the cistern before it goes into the house, and we'll walk through that when we actually do it. But at least you guys have a general understanding as to rainwater collection is going to get funneled, filtered, put into the cistern. Cistern's going to basically send it into the house, and now I'll take you guys back into the house. We'll look over the PEX. I'll take you down to the crawl space, and you can kind of get a better idea of what's going on down there. All right, guys, so we're back in the house, and I know I've walked you through the house a million times with these mechanical videos, so I'm sort of going to be a little bit quick with this. And I figured since all the other mechanical systems I started in the bathroom, went to the laundry and the kitchen, I'll just do the same thing now and quickly walk through the PEX before we go downstairs. So let's go back into the bathroom and I'll explain some things. All right, so we'll just start at the very end. So you've got your shower line, that's a drop ear elbow up there, and this is all 1/2-inch PEX. Red is obviously for hot, blue is for cold. But that's just the fitting that you would typically use to mount so that you have some place to screw your shower head into. So that's called a drop ear elbow, and that comes down to the diverter. So the diverter, just so you guys know, you wouldn't typically buy this separately. You can, but you know, you would buy whatever kit you're going to buy, whether it's a shower and a tub combo, and then obviously it comes with the diverter. And then you're going to have to make some changes, you know, shouldn't say changes, you're going to have to make some add-ons. So some fittings to add on to the actual diverter so that it can take the PEX lines. In this particular situation, I had to get a little funky because one of the PEX lines is actually in the stud. So I had to actually, I think I might have some video. I'll do my best to try and throw some stuff in here. I forget, it's been so long, but yeah, I had to basically do this connection and then push it in the wall to get everything lined up. So it was a little bit weird, but that made it so that we could keep everything in line with not only the shower head, but with the drain as well. So there's the PEX lines for the shower, nothing too crazy. I tapped off that same blue line for the water fill. And just so you guys know, you can do PEX stub outs a multitude of ways. You can use a plastic 90 that bends the PEX itself and brings the actual blue tube out, the blue PEX tubing, in order for you to put either a slip fitting or or shark bite on there to attach whatever you're going to attach to it. Or you can use straps that go across the studs that basically have little snap-in fittings, that allow you to come through with your line. In my case, I decided to use the copper stub outs for two main reasons. One, I like them. They're nice and sturdy, they're nice and strong. I can cut it to whatever length I need and then slide the water shutoff fitting right on there. And two, if I have to test this system, at least the copper stub outs are already closed up, so I don't have to put caps on anything. But yeah, that's the water fill for the toilet. And again, back in the I think I had given some measurements when we were doing the drain, waste, and vent video, but you're, I think, 6 inches over from the center of your toilet flange, and then that gives you your marking on the wall, and then you're, I think, 7 inches up is just about where you want to put your water fill. That leads us over to the vanity. Again, each one of these, anything that has a water supply, that's going to have a shutoff, is going to have these copper stub outs. The reasons why you see all this wood around there was to give me a way to actually either screw or nail the stub out in. And they're a little finicky. I mean, you definitely have to get at least 3 in there. I would say at least 3 corners in order to give it something sturdy. When the sheetrock goes on, I guess maybe it holds a little bit tighter, but for me, I wanted to know that these were nice and tight and, you know, locked in before I even had the sheetrock on. So I sort of added weird pieces like this, you know, countersunk a screw down so that I could screw into here, or the vice versa, and then this way as well through the top. And then that gave me an option to just put 3 corners on there. And I did that in a few spots around the house, you'll see. But everything basically ties together underneath the floor. That's, you know, the electric, the plumbing, all of the RF, all that good stuff. But we'll walk in the laundry room. And I know you guys saw this during the Dream Waste and Vent video, but this is the washer outlet box, very common. You know, it basically gives you your water supply lines for your washer, and it also gives you your drain. Again, I'll show you a little bit underneath the crawl space when we go in as to how some of this stuff comes up through the floor. But again, I don't want to say straightforward, but I'll do it. You know, you just plan where you're going to run your lines. I mean, you know where you need faucets, or you know where you need, you know, water shutoffs or water supplies. So in this instance, because I had the drain line from the washer outlet box coming over and going down into the utility sink drain, I wasn't able to bring my PEX line up because I can't go around the pipe. So for this cold water, left is hot, right is cold. For this cold water, you'll see I basically had to come up through the wall and then back down and come in the top. So my stub out's upside down in a way. But it worked out really well, gave me a nice spot, and I was really adamant about trying to be the same distance from center with my water lines as I could. Same here. Nothing really to mount to. Didn't want to just pack out the wall. It seemed pointless. So this gave me an option to actually measure and put my stub out exactly where I needed it. You know, so if it had to be over this way, I would have obviously cut these a little bit shorter. So it was just a easy way for me to find an opportunity to actually mount these bad boys. And then you can see PEX just kind of runs up and does its thing. There's 2 types of clamps. There's the compression ring, and then there's the cinch ring. I assume that's what they're called. You know, I did cinch rings from, I think, Odie, most of them, or, you know, some of them are Apollo. But, yeah, very easy. Very easy. Not difficult to run PEX by any stretch. You know, if you don't feel comfortable, cut it and do it again. I decided to use, you know, all of the metal fittings, not the plastic. You know, just like everybody's opinion. I mean, some people live and die by, you know, the metal fittings. Some people live and die by the plastic. So it's whatever floats your boat. And then into the kitchen. I had said before, we don't have much going on because we're trying to live a little more minimalistically here. So it's just the bathroom, the laundry room, and the kitchen. And again, I had to do the same thing as far as, you know, the water supply. You know, you got your cold coming up, and then just mounted a little, packed it out a little bit to have something to mount to. And then my hot, as you can see, I wanted them, you know, same distance from center of the drain. So I had to come up and then again through the top. So I like this kind of stuff. It's like being creative, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's part of why I wanted to build a house. But again, PEX was pretty easy. And if you have any questions, concerns, there are a ton of videos out there that you guys can see to figure out whether you're doing it right or doing it wrong, or if you've got a problem, how to kind of troubleshoot the system. Again, I don't have any water running, so if I have 50 leaks, then don't listen to anything I'm saying. But now that you kind of saw a little bit as to what's going on up here, what I'd like to do is just take you downstairs. Maybe I'll just take a few snapshots of the PEX lines running through the floor joist so that you can see how I decided to run them. I want to say there are recommendations, but I like to say shall and should. You know, should being like a recommendation, suggestion, shall being you better do it or you're going to get banged on code. So when it comes to, like, you know, where the water lines run and how close they can be together, there are codes, so make sure you check that. But, you know, if you're smart, you don't want to run your cold water line right next to your hot water line unless for some reason it's the cold water line that's supplying your hot water heater. Otherwise, you're just going to be heating up your cold water and cooling down your hot water. So just be careful kind of where you run them. What I decided to do was, this was really important, as with everything, planned my route. I knew exactly where I wanted to run these PEX lines. I made sure that nothing else was going to get put in those bays. I marked it off, spent almost a day marking off the floor joist, as well as pre-drilling all the holes for all the PEX. PEX is weird. You want to make the hole a little bit bigger, give yourself a little love to go through, but it doesn't need to be massive because you're probably not going to run multiple lines through. Again, that's totally your choice. So what I decided to do was, the most lines I had going in one direction were 4, too cold, too hot. So I just made a 4 pattern, a 4 checker pattern, you know, just a square, and I decided where it was gonna be in my floor bay going down, because I had to drill through like 30 floor joists, maybe 25 floor joists. So I decided where that was gonna be. I wanted 2 inches from the subfloor above, that way if I shot a nail in the subfloor, I didn't hit my PEX. And I wanted it 2 inches above, because that's really where you're supposed to be before you start making holes in those floor joists. So I picked where I wanted my route to go, and I just ran it, and everything worked out really well. I've got a little bit of PEX going the other direction as it runs towards the kitchen, and that was fairly easy, but for the most part, I picked 1 bay, actually 2. One was for all my colds going down, one was for all my hots going down, kept them kind of nice and separated, and I'll show you. And then it just basically ran through the crawl space into all these different areas where I needed to branch off for water. Now that you kind of got an understanding, and again, millions of PEX videos out there, I'm going to take you downstairs because I think it's cooler, the bottom line. I think it's super cool to see this water distribution system. Now that you understand how the water is going to get from outside inside, rain collection on the accessory building, as well as our house, that's for a later conversation, but water will get collected, it'll run through a bunch of first flush systems and filters, it'll go into the cistern, cistern will actually send it underground, and it'll come out in the crawl space, which is where we're gonna go right now, so hang tight. Before we head down into the crawl space, I just at least wanted to show you the hot water heater setup. So this is the PEX lines and the copper stub outs that will supply the tankless hot water heater. Same as the rest of the house, except it's a 3/4 inch PEX line and it comes off the manifold, as you'll see downstairs. But that's what this is right here. And again, this is our small mechanical room in the house. Has our electrical panel, tankless hot water heater, and it'll have a few other odds and ends. But that's all this is. And now we'll head down into the crawl space. All right, guys, I'm gonna do the best I can to walk you through this. It's a little difficult to get the whole thing in the shot. The camera's fairly far away, and it's tough to have the light on and me not shadowing everything out. But this is the start of our water distribution system, or our water control center, or the helm of our spaceship, whatever you want to call it. You saw outside where the accessory building's going to be. There'll be a 2,500 gallon cistern, collects rainwater. That rainwater gets funneled into the house through that 1-inch black polyethylene pipe that you saw outside in that 6-inch insulated PVC line. So that 1-inch the polyethylene pipe comes in, and what it does, it tees off. This line that comes up has a shutoff. That would basically be the shutoff to the house. That would shut the water off from the cistern and not allow any water to flow into the house. The reason why it's on the upside is because I still wanted to have the ability of water to run through the polyethylene pipe with another shutoff. When I shut this water line off, no water to the house, but there's still 30 feet of line. So I wanted another shutoff here so that I could drain that cistern line should I ever need to. From there, the main line comes up. Once it goes through the original shutoff that shuts the water, it comes down the 1-inch polyethylene line into the shallow well pump. Before I get to the pump, just remember, the black polyethylene pipe is not like PEX. I mean, first of all, this is made to be direct burial. This is basically your water line piping. The reason why I say all that is the fittings are totally different. I mean, they look the same, but PEX does not fit polyethylene, polybutylene. You have to buy certain fittings. And again, I wasn't really wanting to do plastic. Not that I don't like them, and in a crawl space, it's probably not a bad idea, especially with hard rainwater. It may be corrosive to metal, so plastic may be a good option. But I was just adamant of staying with brass fittings as much as I could. I sourced them out and I found almost everything in brass fitting. The only one I had trouble with was the T. I just didn't like the T. It said that it was a non-lead based, but I didn't believe it after review. So I just decided to use the T, the plastic T for the polyethylene pipe instead of the brass. And the 90s as well. It was just easier when it came to the polyethylene. But when it went into the shallow well pump, I was adamant about staying with brass. I didn't want any plastic fittings. I didn't want any galvanized fittings. I didn't want anything that had lead in it. Not that I think I'm not going to die eventually, but I just didn't want to contribute to it. So I sourced out every piece that goes into the shallow well pump in brass. And I'll bring you closer so that you can see it. But you basically have to go from 1 1/4 inch fitting, for me, down to a 1-inch fitting. It's not a big deal in most cases because you would be using like either a galvanized reducer or reducing bushing, or you'd be doing like, a galvanized close nipple or whatever the case may be. But first of all, to find 1.25 inch, the shallow well pump manufacturers that make the foot valve and the check valves, they should make the 1.25 inch nipple. They make everything else 1.25 inch, they just don't make the 1.25 inch brass nipple. You have to go out and find it. So what I did was an 1.25 inch to 1 inch reducing bushing in brass. Had to order that special. Then I found a 1 inch brass by 2 inch nipple. From there, I went into the pump check valve. That makes sure that the water can only flow one direction and not go backwards. And then out the back of that is basically a 1 inch male adapter into a 1 inch polyethylene tube fitting, like a cinch fitting. And I'll bring you closer in a second to show you guys. After it comes into the pump, out of the pump is 1 inch. So into the pump is 1.25, out of the pump is 1 inch. This is a Red Lion, half horsepower, shallow well pump. Same exact one that you might see on Martin Johnson. I think he upped his pump to this one. It can be wired as 120 or 240. I'll be wiring it as 240, which will probably draw about 4.5 amps or something, 4 amps, which is a decent amount, but I've seen them run and hopefully we can do a little bit of damage before the pump keeps turning on. But out of the back side of the pump is now 1 inch, so there's a 1 inch PEX fitting. That 1 inch now is basically running through the rest of the system until we get to the end. So out of the end I have a 1 inch male, and then that basically goes to a 90, and it brings up this is basically just my water line getting pumped from the shallow well pump now. And it's going to head into its first filter. I left myself a lot of room on the back end here, just in case I have to add a water meter, if I have to add pressure relief valve, another shutoff. I know how I want the system, just in case I'm told that it needs to be another way. I left myself a little bit of space all the way through. So the first filter that we come up to, inside, at the cistern, there will be another filter, and some other odds and ends. But in the house, after the pump, the very first filter is a 50 micron spin down filter. So it's not replaceable. You basically just hook a tube up to the bottom, open it up, and you can drain the filter, shut it off, and you're good to go again. Basically a sediment filter. From the sediment filter, we go into our first Culligan filter. Did a lot of research on the different filters. There's a lot of different kinds. I settled on these. I like the clear. I want to be able to see inside. What I really love is the valve on top. You have a filter setting, you have a bypass setting, and you have an off, which was all good. Bypass is great if I want to change the filter but not shut the water off. I can bypass it, change the filter, and I don't lose any water to the house. What I like even more is they have shutoffs. So I can use both of these Culligans. If I want to shut the water off after the pump, I can use these filters to basically shut the water off to the manifold. So, multiple use in a way, but ultimately there will be a 25 micron in the first one and a 5 micron in the second one. I can always change them. I can always go from a 5 micron and a 1 micron. I know that some people might say, where's your charcoal filter? Where's your UV lamp? I'm giving a lot of thought to that stuff. I mean, UV, I've done a lot of that stuff in houses before. But again, that's a light that's constantly on, and we're running off solar, so I want to be picky choosy about how I run certain stuff. I have an idea on UV, but since I'd only really be using that for the water I'm drinking, I've got something in mind for that down the road. I may not even do it. We'll see how it works out. But like I said, 50 micron, 25 micron, and this is really Culligan's whole house filter. I didn't put the filters in. When I do, I'll show you, but this is their whole house filter. It's not cheap, and other people make it, but I like theirs. And then I bought another company's that fits Culligan's 5 micron because it came in like a 2 or 4 pack for half the price that the Culligan one did. That will be our ultimate filter setup in regards to how we start off with the house in the beginning. I'm sure maybe we'll make changes, but this is what we feel most comfortable. So after we get to that second, or I should say third filter, now we're changing from a 1 inch to a 3/4 inch. So we're coming out of the filter with a 3/4 inch male fitting with a 3/4 inch PEX adapter on the other side. From there, we take 3/4 inch PEX down, and that goes into our plumbing manifold. This is it Viega? Viega, V-I-E-G-A. A couple people make it. I do like Apollo's for their brass. I like Apollo's distribution block or their Manabloc because they have brass PEX adapters, which I do like. But again, if you read everybody's reviews out of 1,000, there's 500 people that love both, and there's 500 people that hate both. So you just use your best judgment and go with it. But as far as the manifold, like I said, we have very little running into the house. So this is how we're starting off. We have our 3 hot legs and our 3 cold legs. That's the bathroom for hot and cold. That's the laundry room, utility room for hot and cold, and the kitchen for hot and cold. That's why there's only 3 lines. But how this block, or how I used it, there's a couple of ways that you can actually plumb this in. I ran my main water feed in the bottom 3/4 inch fitting, and then out the top, and just a note, these fittings are special to the Manabloc. Don't cheap out on those. Make sure you get the brass fittings with the O-rings for the PEX adapters. It's worth it. But basically, you have your 3-inch cold water line coming in, and how this is set up, and they don't tell you, which sucks, is that there's actually a plate right up between this hot and cold, and it sections off this whole chamber. So you can actually plug this bottom and tee off your water line on top if you wanted to send that to your water heater. How I did it, which should be standard, is your water supply line comes in the bottom. As it comes up the right side chamber, it feeds cold water to any branch connectors that you basically added. For me, it's going to run cold water to my 3 zones. But it continues right out the top. That 3/4 water line runs to my hot water heater, the tankless, and then from my tankless hot water heater, the hot water heater runs back and into the Manabloc, and this chamber right here is where the hot water sits. It can't get past here and feed into the cold, so that's why these 3 hots come off this side. So it's a little confusing. If they gave you a diagram and let you know that there was a plate in here that sectioned off the hot and cold chambers, you maybe wouldn't be as confused being able to use either as a through or plugging the bottom and teeing off your water line at the top or at the bottom to go in your hot water heater. I know that might not make sense, but you'll see if you start doing some research on these different types of manifolds. But now that the manifold was in place, I was able to tie in all my lines. And everything worked out really well. I was hoping to be able to swoop both lines down without having to use any type of 90s. I could only do it on the cold side because of where I mounted the distribution block. On the hot side, I had to use the 90s. It's okay. At least I didn't have to use too many, like twice to get them in there. But the hot water lines come down, and I have my bathroom, my utility sink, my kitchen, and then same on the other side, bathroom, utility sink, and kitchen for the cold lines. There might be some questions on this, and I'll take a really great picture if I can so that it can just sit up there as a still in the end. I know sometimes, like I say, I like to just reference a picture so I can see some things. I'll also take a couple stills of the PEX running through the floor joist so you can get a gist of how I ran it, how I stapled it, you know, all that good stuff. But this is basically the water distribution system for the house. Again, water comes in the bottom. Gravity feeds to the pump. The pump then pressurizes, pushes all the water through the 1-inch PEX, through the filters, into the manifold, and then the manifold basically breaks out and sends water to the rest of the house. So in theory, that's how everything should work. In reality, we'll find out. But that's the water distribution system. I know I kept saying this was going to be a PEX video, but I really feel like this is the more important part. You know, getting water to the different faucets can be done a multitude of ways with PEX and copper and so on and so forth. But as far as how you set this up, there's a million ways to do it. Some people are going to tell me that I don't need 3 filters. Some people might say I need more than 3 filters, or I need a shutoff, or I want a meter, and that's okay. I mean, you can have these systems any way you want. I'm sure, like I said, that I will make changes as we go forward, but I feel pretty confident that this is a good place to start. But this is the water distribution at our off-grid home, and I hope you guys dig it. Any questions, let me know. And like I said, I'll throw some stills at the end here so that you guys can see the different PEX lines. But yeah, appreciate you guys stopping by, and like that vid if you can, and subscribe if you're not. And we will catch you guys on the next video, man. Have a great day. We'll see you soon.